There are a few key considerations when selling homes and dealing with the renter market. Listen to Mike A'marri and Brook as they share their experience of how to sell a home, what it's like to live as a long-term renter, how to find a good rental property, and more. Mike also gives a quick update on the current state of the real estate market. All this and more on the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast.
Hi, everybody. This is Mike Riley. And sorry for the last couple weeks. We've been on vacation, and Brooke Riley had a birth in his family, his first son. How you holding up, Brooke?
Very caffeinated.
All right.
If you hear crying in the background, that's why.
Okay.
It's yours.
One of the benefits of working remote. All right. And Amari's our engineer and intro guy. Got a beautiful day today, Amari. Sunny. Are you feeling sunny or are you just feeling tired?
I'm also feeling highly caffeinated, but I love this kind of weather. I don't know the exact temperature, but this feels great right here versus those 90 days.
Like 72 degrees, light breeze, blue sky, no humidity. Oh, and let's see, it'll go down to the low 60s tonight. Yeah.
It's perfect. Perfect.
Hey, folks, this is what Cleveland like in the summer and early fall. Just super, super great weather here. So if you're listening in Phoenix, Arizona, or Austin, Texas, or somewhere in Florida, this is the place to be. So, all right, well, listen, we're going to talk about, we sold off a number of our rental properties, and a few little tips to keep in mind when you're selling properties. So, Brooke, you've been sort of handling that. You want to go over some things to keep an eye on?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to making sure you have all the right things checked off, all your inspections done, and not waiting for the last second for your final inspections. I think one thing, if I had to go back in time, and saw the purchase agreement for one of our properties, if I saw the closing date was July 5th, I would have pushed back and said, hey, look, the chances of us getting that done the day after, July 4th, we might as well wait, like another week or so, just because we ran into a lot of problems that were really outside of our control with the city, inspectors not showing up, inspectors getting sick, them not saying we submitted the right paperwork when, we know that we did. And it was just a lot of kind of the final little touches to get the house to the title company, because, that's really all the title company cares about. They want to make sure that, yep, you've got it signed off from the city, you've got it signed off from the buyer, if there's any inspections that, that they did. So it was a little annoying to try to navigate that, but that comes with the territory, that things don't always run, on time, and you kind of have to brace yourself that there might be, a delay. In our case, it was about 8 days. So
yeah,
done. We signed yesterday, so we're just waiting on the wire to come in.
Yeah, for some of you who are not familiar with Cleveland real estate, a lot of cities have point of sale inspections called POS, and depending on the deal, most of the time the seller will assume the point of sale, meaning the city has gone out, they've done an inspection, they've caught a number of things they want to have repaired, and it's up to the seller to take care of them, and then the city's got to come back, double check, make sure you did it, and then they let the city lets them know, hey, we're good to go, and then we can close. Now, what happens if you're dealing with an incompetent city? where they're understaffed and takes forever to get a point of sale. So a lot of times, earlier you get the point of sale from the city in the process, the better. And then, so when you're closing, hey, that's all been taken care of. It's not at the last minute, right, Brooke?
Yeah, and it was a little unusual because we've had experiences with this specific city, and we've been pleasantly surprised that they were, on top of it. But this was just a situation where they weren't on top of it. The other thing that people need to realize is, and it's one thing that we go through a lot, is we're not dealing with a house that is, empty. Like, we're navigating our renters who are there. We're coordinating that we'll have enough time by the time they leave to come in and clear out our furniture to get any kind of larger violations completed. So, that makes it a little more complicated. I mean, if the house was empty and, no furniture, no one in there, would be a little bit, easier to get done. But that's just another thing that we had to, you know, that we had to go through.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is for us, we've been selling some of our properties. They're all furnished, and we will put it on the market between renters coming in. These are short term, so it's not like we're showing a house where we have a long-term tenant. These are all short term, so it's furnished, it's clean, people can come in, we don't have to call the tenant. And we have been making, over the last 2 years, a concerted effort to downsize the number of properties we have, because in earlier podcasts, we've been talking about how, there's just so much competition now in short-term rentals. And the market, I think, is in the process of cooling a little. It's not white hot like it was 2 years ago during COVID, 2 or 3 years ago, when as soon as it hit the market, it was sold. And when we never saw that in Cleveland, but right now we're starting to see a sort of a cooling off, the effect of the interest rates at 6% as opposed to 1 or 2%. So, what other issues, Brooke or A'marri, when you think about these last couple months, us selling off some of our properties?
I don't know. I mean, I think the biggest thing that we've run into issues with has just been making sure we have enough time for when the house is closing, to making sure all of our inspections have passed. That's been from the properties we sold in the fall to our most recent one. If we've had any problems, that's probably been the most common one, in my opinion.
Right. How about you, A'marri? You're on the bookkeeping side.
I didn't have enough real hands-on experience to really have a lot to say about it.
Okay. Now let's switch gears here from selling houses to renting houses. Now, A'marri, you're a renter. What's it like out there from a long-term rental perspective?
It's okay. I mean, I think my perspective is, when you're looking, at least in Cleveland, there's just, for me, it's hard to find stuff that kind of meets just all of your just requirements of the location you want to be within, the price range you want to be, with something that's not, just in a bad area. And, it's really hard kind of finding that sweet spot, because, I mean, right now I'm in a okay area, an okay spot with, mainly the pricing is a little bit lower. So that's my main kind of staying point. And I like the space, the area could be a little bit better, but it's kind of finding those sweet spots for everything. Also with the landlord, how proactive is, the landlord, or how, I guess, even just reactive they are when you have something that needs to get addressed within the house. Like, we've been emailing the maintenance people for over a couple of weeks now, just for some really simple fixes that need to get taken place in the house that are above my capabilities to manage. I have no problem handling something simple, but we're talking about like an electrical issue or something like that. Definitely need them to respond, and they just haven't been that responsive. So it can be tough finding the sweet spot for all those different kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you something, because I know this is something I've raised in earlier podcasts. Why don't you just get one of our guys over to fix it and just deduct it from the rent?
I was gonna say I just don't want to get into a whole thing with the landlord. I've tried to say that before proactively, just letting them know, hey, this is something I want to do, and they're like, no, 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 we'll have somebody come out. We don't want you bringing your own people in there. And it's just like, well, just fix the problem, and I won't have to go to these alternatives.
Hey, let's stop here. We got to pay some bills. 30 seconds, and we'll be back. If you've been listening to this podcast, then you understand, or should understand, the pitfalls of investing in Cleveland real estate. Say you're looking for an investment property to rent, and these are the things that could happen, and often do. You overpay for a house, and it's in the ghetto. Then you find that it's a money pit with endless surprise repairs. Your hapless property manager, who may be the brother-in-law of the realtor, gets a tenant who after 3 months stops paying the rent. Then the toilet explodes, and you have nobody to repair it because, guess what? The property manager is not answering the phone. Yep, that's the ugly side of the Cleveland real estate market. But we have a solution. Buy one of our properties. It's been inspected. It's been vetted. It's in a rock-solid part of town. It comes with a Gold Star tenant paying top dollar rent, and we manage it. Call us at 216-371-8160 if you're interested. Well, you might want to leverage, the fact that you're a key person at Riley Painting and Contracting. That's the company, that's the parent company here. Sometimes it's like, hey, listen, you got till Friday to fix this.
Right. Yeah.
All right, that's it. And I think everybody out there from the renter side is keep in mind, document what your communication is. Give them a deadline. They're probably having a problem just even finding somebody to do the repairs. And I understand they don't want you screwing it up, but just let them know, hey, this is what I do for a living. I'm in the property business.
Right. Right. No, that makes sense.
Okay. Brooke, what's your thoughts on, if you had to give advice from a renter's perspective?
Well, I think it's important to have a good relationship with your landlord. I think I know some landlords can be pretty ruthless about things, and others can give away, like the whole store. But I think as long as, you have a good reputation with them, you document things on, on an email, sending in, if there's any major issues, like sending in some photos, making sure that you have, a walkthrough, like a checklist, so they don't screw you when you leave, saying, oh, you damaged this. It's like, no, when I inspected the house, you signed off, this was already in this condition. Because at the end of the day, you want to be living in a place and working with a landlord, who you trust, who you like, that's not going to give you anxiety about things.
Right. I understand. I think everybody's got to do their due diligence on both ends of the transaction. If you're a renter, you want to do a background due diligence check on the landlord. If you're in a duplex, find out who is living on the first floor, right, A'marri, or the second floor, so you're not subjected to, arguments at 3 a.m. in the morning, loud music being played, right,
Yeah.
A'marri?
I mean, and this might just be my tax bracket, but this is kind of what my original point was. I don't know how realistic all of those things are. I mean, you absolutely can be proactive in everything that you both are talking about, but actually, you're 9 times out of 10, you're going to be kind of, saying forget it to one of those things or one or two of those things. Like, you like the place, you like this, you might be like, okay, whatever to that other thing that I can't really change.
Well, if you're a tenant that takes care of the property, maybe even volunteers, hey, I'll take care of the lawn, but my credit rating is 5-star. I got a decent job. You can call my employee. I'm not interested in buying, but I'll be a 5-star renter. That, landlords pay attention to that. At least good landlords do. So
that's the thing. Many good landlords, are out there.
Right. Okay, let's shift gears a little and talk about, should you buy investment property now? The market's cooling a little. What's your thoughts, Brooke?
Well, the market could be cooling, but the inventory is, I'm not really up to speed with, how many properties are available at a reasonable price. I definitely think things have cooled off. The days of listing your house and getting 20 offers, I think, is gone, but I think it's still a seller's market. And
Yeah, I would say 60-40 on the seller's market side. Go ahead.
yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting to see where we're at kind of in like that late fall, early winter. But I think if you've got the capital and you've found a property that is very reasonably priced in a good neighborhood and you're interested in buying it to invest or rent or to flip, it's like we've talked about in other podcasts, check your numbers, see how much it's going to cost to actually fix it up. And if the numbers shake out, then you should go for it.
Yeah. What's your thoughts, A'marri, when you were looking for rental? Did you spend any time looking for rental property to rent from? How are the pictures out there?
Yeah, I spent not a significant amount of time looking, just because around that time it wasn't even the best time for me to be looking anyways. But I mean, every once in a while I'll go through and just take a look, and it's just kind of like this cycle of almost disappointment. And I might not be looking in all the right places either, but you go through and you're like, oh, this house looks nice, this looks nice, this, and you kind of go through on Google Maps and look at the area, and you're like, I don't, especially being Clevelanders, you kind of know what areas you don't really
Right.
prefer,
And
I guess, to be in. So
yeah, I think for you out of staters looking to buy in Cleveland, we've getting a lot of calls from people who are buying property in the hood. I mean, it's just shocking. I know I mentioned this in an earlier podcast, but the best way that you can figure out what is the stability of the neighborhood you're in, is it ascending, is it descending? Look for coffee shops. That's usually a sign of an ascending neighborhood. Bread store, little cafes, little delis. But if you see a lot of dollar stores, not a good sign. Not a good sign. I mean, pretty middle class, maybe lower middle. Every now and then you can score something where, somebody wants to rent their duplex out, and maybe you can be their property manager and get a reduced rate. But again, it's scoring housing is very challenging in today's world. Wouldn't you say, Brooke?
What do you mean by scoring?
I mean, getting that good property that you can really settle into. It's not a buyer's market. It's still a little bit of a seller's market, and the inventory is so. So, final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the big factor in all that is is like the neighborhood. I mean, if anyone listening to this is familiar with Cleveland, like if I had a time machine and we could go back 10, 15 years and invest in Ohio City and in Tremont, we would be, you know, we would be doing very,
You'd,
very well.
you'd have a private jet. Or how about investing in Brooklyn 25 years ago?
Yeah,
So,
like, I've been watching this show on Netflix about the real estate market in New York City, and there's a young kind of hotshot realtor
oh, I've seen that. Yeah.
who's investing in, or she's trying to find neighborhoods in New York that are about to kind of hit, those, they'll become like the new Soho, the new Brooklyn. And what she did was she cold called a lot of apartment owners, and she said, "Hey, I'm a new agent in this firm," and she's gotten a couple of meetings, and she did her homework, and she realized that Disney and Google they're setting up kind of their East Coast locations in that specific neighborhood in a couple of years. So it's like I said, I think it all comes back to the neighborhood that you
Yeah.
want to invest in.
Yeah. And we talked a couple years ago about a micro targeting a neighborhood where you can start seeing trend lines. Maybe Amazon's moving in where they're going to need, they're going to be building their new headquarters, or, like a Disney or whatever. Your ear to the ground to see where the trend lines are. That is as old as time in terms of investing. 200 years ago are they going to have a railroad line? If you had a railroad line, then then that little town is going to really start growing. Back in the 50s, when they had the interstate highway system passed in the mid 50s, all of a sudden Holiday Inns started popping up along where the big freeways were. And then you had the malls, and then you had, little suburbs, outer ring suburbs growing. So, I mean, real estate is a very fluid discussion, but these things never change. And you have, like investing in a stock, you have to do your due diligence. So, but in terms of heat check and tips on selling your house, tips on renting, the podcast we're talking about now is just a general kind of, all right, we're starting to get back to work, starting to do back on our weekly podcast. And we'll have some data for you next week, analytics that'll really take the temperature of what is Cleveland real estate. We'll get back to the heat check, and Brooke will reach out to Lauren and Josie and that crew for some the latest analytics. All right.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, we're going to wrap this one up, and we'll be dropping our new one next Thursday. Okay, folks. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening to the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast with Mike Riley. Please add our show or follow us on Spotify, Overcast, Apple Podcast, or Spotify. Leave a like or comment on the video. All engagement is appreciated. Subscribe to us on YouTube as well for video content coming soon. For any Cleveland listeners or Cleveland Browns fans, you can check out our other podcast, Cleveland Browns Anonymous, for our weekly group therapy session. This is also on all the same platforms as the Cleveland Real Estate Investor.